watch me educate. Yeah, we been, could've started, but it's never late. Do it for my kids, yeah, let's set it straight. Do it for your kids, gotta set it straight. It's time to regulate. We need change now. We need solo, we need...
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. You know, most dentists don't get into trouble because they're bad people. They get into trouble because no one showed them where the landmines were. Today's guest is the guy who used to show up after all the explosions took place. We're going to talk a little bit about what that job was like, what led him in that direction, and what he does now to help the dentists that before all he could do was help to prosecute. So, without further ado, Duane Tinker, or as our friends like to call him, Tink. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Man, I'm really glad we could finally make this happen. Now, you live here in Texas, and we've been talking about getting together for a long time, but our calendars are like ships passing in the night. We just couldn't make it happen.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about where you grew up. You know, I know you're here in Texas now, but where did childhood find you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Minnesota. And
got some interesting things going on there today, don't they?
In the Twin Cities, yeah. So a lot of stuff that's happened is my old stomping grounds.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
So what was home life like? Was it really structured type of a home life? Is that kind of what led you down the path that you eventually took, or you know, what was it like?
You know, I would say probably a lack of structure, if anything. Shoot, I grew up in a single parent family, and you know, I'm a Gen X, and all that entails. You know, latchkey kid. So, you know, I knew from the time I was a small boy, probably 4 or 5 years old, or as long as I can remember, I always knew that I wanted to do something to serve people, and you know, I found myself drawn to public safety. You know, from the time I was a small boy. I remember I made my first uniform. It was a light blue shirt with a Star of Life patch on my shoulder. And, you know, I always knew that I wanted to grow up and be a police officer. I wanted to be a paramedic, and I wanted to be a firefighter. And I've done most of those. So, some of that, I guess it was just, I just followed my boyhood dream.
So what was it like for you? Were you working during 9/11? What did the world look like on the police force there? Or, well, I guess we should go over kind of your lineage in service. You began as an EMT, right? And you ended up working for dispatch. Mm-hmm. And after that, went into law enforcement. Then you worked as part of law enforcement for the board. Correct. And then finally you decided you wanted to go out on your own and build what you've built currently. Yeah. So let's just kind of look at that from a 500-foot kind of a view. You know, you were drawn to public service as a kid, and you ended up gravitating toward EMS first. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the journey that led you first from, you know, hey, I'm going to be an EMS, all the way to, you know, enforcing board's rules. I mean, that's a heck of a journey.
Yeah. Well, EMS was the easiest point of entry for me. It was actually how I was able to tolerate going to school. I hated school. I hated structure. I hated authority. Imagine that. I grew up and became a police officer, you know.
The irony is not lost.
No, not at all. And that's very typical for most police officers. You know, I was in school. I was probably, if I would have been nominated for anything, I probably would have been nominated for most likely to go to prison. So, you know, I was certainly headed down that path for sure. Yeah. No, I ended up, you know, in my college days, or in my high school, my senior year of high school, I actually went to the community college half a day to work on my EMT certification. Mm-hmm. So when I graduated with my EMT. So that kind of boosted me into public safety, and I was working for an ambulance service in St. Paul, and went to college, got my law enforcement degree, and ended up going into law enforcement. My wife, during that time, working as an EMT, fell in love with my wife, and you know, we got married, and she ended up leaving EMS for the most part, going into teaching. And working in Minnesota, it was really difficult to find a job in law enforcement. So I ended up we ended up moving to Texas, and took a job as a 911 dispatcher. And I had to go back to the police academy here, since I didn't actually have working experience in Minnesota. I couldn't just ladder up. So went to the police academy again down here, and finally ended up in law enforcement. And it was funny, you mentioned 9/11. I actually got my badge on September 7th of 2001.
Wow.
And the day of September 11th, I was supposed to go on base at Carswell to get my photo taken for my police ID. And boy, that didn't happen.
I imagine.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Just to serve people and just lean into that heart of compassion. And I very quickly recognized that as I progressed in my career and moved into working for the dental board, and I've always had kind of that gift of mercy. I had a lot of life experience growing up, dealing with death and sickness and broken families and brokenness and substance abuse. Not that I ever had a substance abuse issue, but I was exposed to a lot of things that a lot of people have never been exposed to. And with that experience, it just it opens your eyes to things. So as I progressed in my career, went into law enforcement, and then ended up working as an investigator for the dental board. I kind of recognized that in dentistry there's a lot of just amazing people, and I began to see a trend that most of the cases I had, most of the dentists that I investigated were great people who either just did dumb things, or they or their staff didn't do things that they were supposed to. And I look at dentists, and for the most part, I see people that have this freaking huge heart that is just full of compassion. And there's a lot of people that are in it for the right reason. There's some people that are in it for the wrong reason. But the large majority of the people that are in it for the right reason, you can just kind of look at these people and see that massive heart of compassion that they have. And I thought, man, those are the people. That's my avatar. Those are the people that I can share my experience with to make a difference. To help keep them out of trouble, help them understand and navigate those regulatory issues that they have to contend with. And, I just found that that's my niche. I just kind of carved out my own niche.
So what would you say the percentages were when you were working in enforcement for the dental board of dentists who had done it wrong and there was intention behind it versus those who had made some mistake that they were being penalized for, but it was simply of lack of systems or training or even just knowledge of what they were supposed to do?
Yeah, I would say, I investigated about 300 cases in 2 years. That's a bunch of cases. Of the people that were truly just horrible people, horrible dentists that did bad stuff intentionally, probably a couple dozen. So, do the math. You can see that the rest of those people or their staff were just, great people that just didn't know what they didn't know.
It's so sad because you really hope that number is zero, but it's not.
But, there's bad apples in every profession. So why would dentistry be immune to that?
Absolutely. Well, I've often made the joke with some of my cop friends. There's literally only two kinds of cops: the ones who get in because they believe in the system, and the ones who were bullies in high school and they get in to just keep being bullies.
Yeah.
Yep. It's funny because you see it so clearly, in your interactions with them. Why did you get into police work?
Yeah. It's amazing to me that you have friends that are cops, because most cops don't have friends that are not cops.
Well, a lot of them started as patients.
Yeah.
Or I met them through jiu-jitsu or firearms or some other shared interest. And that actually brings up a question. When you put on a badge, and one of the things that I hear a lot is people treat you differently, and it's not necessarily a good thing. It's not necessarily a respect thing. What were your experiences with that? Put on a badge, how do people treat you? How do people talk to you? How do they see you? Versus you walking around without a badge.
Yeah, I mean, that you're definitely typecast. And, it's interesting when you go to a social engagement, people never highlight, hey, this got to meet this guy Tink, man, he's a plumber.
Right.
But they always call you out because you're a cop, So, your ability to walk in and be unnoticed, forget that.
Well, in a very real way, enforcement officers, LEOs, they receive a lot of training.
Yeah.
But they don't know the law. And that's 99.99% of them.
Yeah.
And I think there's some analogs there because you guys are responsible for enforcing the law.
Right.
Dentists are responsible for following the laws in our profession. And there's so many cops out there, they'll make a wrongful arrest or they'll, procedurally something wasn't right or, they didn't Mirandarize someone exactly right or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you'll see them, they'll make arrests or they'll make stops and they believe that they're within their rights, within their charter, which I think a lot of people don't understand is when you are a police officer, you follow a charter. Like your specific police department has a unique charter and that is what you do.
Right.
And so being a police doesn't mean being a policeman, the same thing everywhere.
Right.
There are different things. And I think that's coming a lot more to light now as we start seeing like the sanctuary cities and things like that, where law enforcement literally, by the description of their charter, their hands are tied, even if they want to enforce laws or even if they don't want to do certain things, you're tied into that charter and to what the operating philosophy, what the zeitgeist, if you will, of the police department is.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit? And particularly in light of the things that have been going on in the past 5 years, or perhaps even further.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm out of law enforcement. I had a lot of memories. I had a lot of fun. Did a lot of cool stuff. Saw a lot of horrible stuff. And, you're right. Their hands are tied. They're governed by their policies, their mandates. And, that between the good old boys club and, like you point out, cops just don't sometimes use good judgment. I look back and I made a million mistakes myself. Nothing that send me to prison, but gosh, I made a lot of mistakes. And it's just part of being a cop. I mean, it takes experience, but law enforcement, just the very nature of the profession, and man, it's hard. It's hard on a person. That's why you see post-traumatic stress. That's why you see cops killing themselves. That's why you see cops exploding in rage. Making bad decisions, and they're heavily scrutinized. And it's
Absolutely.
I'm conflicted. I'm pro law enforcement, but I'm also kind of ashamed at the way that people behave today. It's frankly, it's kind of appalling.
I agree, but I mean, you look at. I read a really interesting legal review of the most recent ICE thing that this lady who was shot.
Yeah.
And the report was entitled "Legal but Awful."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it seems to me that that's so true about so much in law enforcement today, because you have people who are, I'm not going to put too fine a point on it. You guys know I just speak my mind. People lost their fucking minds after COVID. And there are some people who are still in that post-COVID, I lost my mind region. I think people who were on the edge got pushed over for a myriad of reasons. But now you have people who will react in non-traditional ways that law enforcement officers have to be thoughtful about. How am I going to handle a situation if this happens that never would have occurred to you?
Yeah.
I mean, having someone get upset when you're arresting them because you called them a he or a she versus what their professed pronouns were that you have no idea of knowing until they get upset.
Yeah.
So you either have to proactively, run interference on every word that comes out of your mouth, and that adds additional layers of stress. You have to be cognizant of all of these things that normally would never have set someone off or caused someone to react in a violent or troublesome way before. But now we've got, I like to call them, I'm going to get so much hate for this, the alphabet warriors. Guys, if you identify as something, that's fine. If you live a different lifestyle, it's your business. Your bedroom should stay your bedroom. Your wallet should stay your wallet. The government should stay the fuck out of both.
Right.
But in a very real way, we live in a society now where we've gone from feeling that way to a large portion of a society wants the cops in someone else's bedroom or someone else's wallet. Not their own, of course, but I imagine it's a minefield out there for you guys, and I know you still have friends on the force.
Yeah.
How do they feel about what is happening to policing? I suspect I know because our police are in record numbers retiring and not being replaced.
Yeah, right.
What does the world look like through their lens of, their perspective, their perspective on the world right now?
Yeah, a lot of the friends that I have left in law enforcement, they've moved out of patrol so that they're not on the front line and they can kind of just coast in their careers till they retire.
Right.
Taking up assignments and like working court security or delivering civil papers and things like that. So hopefully their chances ended up on a YouTube or in an ICE shooting type situation is slim to none.
And losing their pension, the things that they've built up their entire lives just because society has changed.
Right.
You see a lot of this stuff out there, and frankly, we're probably going to cover some topics that are going to get me in trouble, hopefully. If you feel like you should not answer a question, just say, I think I should probably not answer that one. That's okay.
The fifth, right?
That's it. So, between race relations and sexual identification and tribalism, so far as politics goes, and everything being politics today, and it seems that everyone wants you to not just know your opinion, but wants to convince you, and not through rational discussion, but through just kind of screaming and yelling and causing trouble until you just kind of buckle under.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do it. It takes a kind of a certain kind of masochism to put yourself in that position these days.
I used to miss it. I did, and not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the crap that we've all seen on TV. I mean, I look back and I'm like, man, that could have been me.
Right.
What happened to this guy? That could have been me. Heck, I could have been in prison.
Well, especially when the officers are following procedures and regulations according to the charter, according to their operating procedures. A perfect example comes to mind with George Floyd, which I know is controversial.
Yeah.
But in the aftermath, you look at it, and every single procedure that they were supposed to follow, they did follow.
Right.
And as it happens, he OD'd on fentanyl. It wasn't police brutality.
Yeah.
I can see where people could take the out of context videos and say, hey, look, there's a problem here. And frankly, there is a problem, but not every single case of use of force is police brutality. And we have to be cognizant of that. Yeah. And we have to really look at every single case before reacting. But it seems like society is simply incapable of that anymore.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's a saying that comes to mind that, I adhere to a lot in law enforcement that I even pass on to dentists. Just because you can do something
doesn't mean you should.
Doesn't mean you should, yeah, right. And that's a hugely, I think that's a profound concept, really.
Right.
You look at that ICE shooting that happened in Minneapolis, and was he justified in shooting her? Absolutely, in my opinion. Was
legal,
it preventable?
But awful.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. Nobody won. That woman lost her life, and that officer that pulled the trigger. He's going to have to live with that decision the rest of his life.
100%. Well, and you can look at that almost painting a broad brush on every single one of these controversies. The George Floyd case is an absolute perfect example.
Yeah.
There are other ways that could have been managed.
Right.
That would not have resulted in his death.
Well,
But at the same
it
time,
may not have resulted in
right, because he did OD.
I mean, there's 100 things he could have done different.
So at the same time, you never know what is going to happen, and you pick what appears to be the most prudent choice at the time.
Right.
And when you're balancing, I've got one suspect, we're arresting him, he's dangerous. What do we do to protect ourselves? Because that has to be, part of your training, and it has to be the primary thing on your mind is you protect yourself and the other cops there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that suspect, if they are acting out, their safety comes second, in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And I'm not saying by training, I'm not saying by regulation, but simply as a matter of course, we protect ourselves if someone is a danger to, and we actually, I would say, protect others first before ourselves.
Yeah.
If someone's a danger, and how you balance that, and the armchair quarterbacks after engagement, when they look at things and they're like, oh, well, you could have, you should have, but everyone makes mistakes and everyone makes suboptimal choices. And just because they're a worse choice doesn't mean they're the wrong choice,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of the way I feel about it.
I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm also replaying this same scenario that happened, with that, officer shooting, that ICE shooting in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had that happen to me once. I went to a stabbing call, and the suspect was reported that the suspect jumped in a vehicle, and the vehicle description broke out over my radio, and I look up, and that very vehicle is driving straight at me. It's dark. I could have shot that guy, and I didn't. Would I have been justified? I was actually criticized afterward because I moved out of the way and didn't shoot him.
Right.
And, a chase ensued, and, I let him go, and somebody else picked up the chase, but, they ended up apprehending the guy down the road. But I'm like, I was criticized because I didn't shoot that guy, and I'm glad that I didn't.
Well, what was their justification on the criticism?
That the guy drove at me, and I literally pushed off the hood. The guy could have killed me.
Well,
Like,
and the
dude, man, I'd have
resulting
shot him.
and the
You
resulting
weren't there.
chase ended up with endangering other people's lives because of a high-speed chase and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example of how every single choice has bad outcomes, and you don't know what those outcomes are when you make the split-second decision that you have to make.
Yeah.
And I was never in law enforcement. I was in the military for a short time, not nearly long enough to be called a veteran, even though I am. I was in for about, I think, 18 months. It was during the Clinton administration, whenever they shut down all the Delta bases
Okay.
to balance the budget,
Yeah.
and didn't really have a plan other than saving money. So Fitzsimmons Hospital was where my AIT was.
Okay.
And so I had gone through basic, and then I spent the next 18 months patching camo nets because they shut down the only base that taught that course.
Okay.
And eventually got out with a breach of contract on the government's part. So I did go through a lot of the same military training, but I was never deployed.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the kind of things they make you think about in force-on-force application, and from just talking to my buddies and the cops, it's funny how we use a lot of the same language to describe situations, and really it's because you guys are the civilian military,
Yeah,
or we are the government police force,
Right. Yeah, it's crazy.
But it's it's a lose-lose situation, and particularly in today's climate.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So when did it hit you, kind of taking a step sideways here, at some point you're sitting here, you're working for the dental board, you're investigating 300 cases. At some point it hit you that the system was just irreparably broken,
Yeah.
And that's the point I was trying to make earlier, is cops don't know the law.
Yeah.
Dentists don't know the law that they're supposed to follow either.
Yeah.
They're out there. I read the laws.
Yeah.
I've written a couple, but it's like section 26.26.5B subsection M. Oh, okay. I need to go over there and read the definition of this word. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I got to go to another one and read the definition of that word. Okay. Now that I've got that one definition done, it took me 30 minutes to figure out what they were saying here.
Yeah.
Now I got to go read this section. No one has time for that.
Right.
The information is out there. But unless someone dedicates themselves to knowing all the information and how it applies and when it applies, really, they're just kind of like a blind man playing darts.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that epiphany and when you just went, I can use all of this skill set I've picked up over the years, and it's almost like fate has pushed me into this direction, because it sounds like that's kind of what happened is all of your life experiences just kind of funneled you straight to this. You probably have had zero intention of ending up here. And so what was that epiphany like? When did it occur? Why did it occur? I don't ask easy questions.
Yeah, no doubt. Goodness, I didn't see this coming. But, I guess I've always, I found it easy reading legal language, reading rules and regulations. And like you said, it's a journey of, okay, this references this other law over here. Let's follow that rabbit trail.
It's your tism.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and in fact, I remember when I did my first lectures after I started consulting, people are like, man, you sound like Joe Friday. Like Joe Friday. Yeah, I remember who that character is. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, go look up Dragnet. But anyway, when Joe Friday or Sergeant Joe Friday would
just the facts, ma'am. Just the
that's
facts.
Right. But he would always quote statutes and citations, and I found myself doing that in some of my early presentations, and I'm like, yeah, that's funny. As I left the dental board and started moving into consulting, I took on embodied the tooth cop. It's kind of my smart aleck alter ego, but Google the tooth cop. You'll check out my little my character.
Check out his podcast too. He's got a great one.
Yeah, it's called Talking with the Tooth Cop, and yours truly. As I went about my business, working for the board, I'd always ask God to give me, give me the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, run my own business, and that idea just kind of evolved as I was working my cases with the dental board, and then I stumbled into somebody who was actually doing what I do, that was also a former investigator, and I was like, wait a minute, you make money doing what? You work for dentists? You help them stay out of trouble? I'm like, what? Mind blown, as I'm grinding away, making my $42,000 a year salary, starving, raising 5 kids, got my house payment, 2 car payments, all the animals and fish we had to feed. I'm like, man, I'm doing this wrong. I started paying attention and looking at dentists, and I'm like, maybe I can sculpt out a good living for myself and do some good in the world, and more about doing the good in the world, just to share my experience. And I started asking around, I started thinking, I'm like, I've got this experience of mine. I'm not the board, and I don't understand how the board thinks, because the board doesn't think. The board just, enacts rules and regulations. I'm not dissing the board. I'm just saying.
I am.
I'm not dissing the board. I'm not pro board either. Don't get me wrong.
Well, the dental board's job in Texas, at the very least.
Yeah.
The dental board was told in no uncertain terms, you either start finding dentists and pay for yourself, or you're all out of a job and you're all fired.
Their mission is to make dentistry safer for dentists. Make dentistry safer for Texans.
Right.
It's their statement, and they systematically fail in that.
Right.
And they've been brutalized. They've been sunsetted for failure to fulfill that mission. And, I just kind of saw a splinter. I could splinter off and work on that same objective of making dentistry safer by focusing on making dentistry safer for dentists first, and that safety for the patients would be the byproduct.
Right.
And that's really kind of the core, the crux of my consulting business is, making dentistry safer for the dentist, and, that trickle-down effect, if you will, because I believe it works that way.
Well, I know from experience that the dental board's job is to find you, and they will if at all possible. I had a complaint. Lady came in. She got a lower RPD, required the extraction of 3 teeth, all gross coronal decay. Patient was offered restoration in a separate treatment plan, which she refused. She was instructed that we could do endo and crowns on the teeth to save them, and a bridge in one area so that she wouldn't have to get an RPD. It was out of her price range. She decided on the RPD. So she does the RPD. She finances it. gets the RPD and decides not to pay, keeps the denture, nothing wrong with it, complained to the dental board about my price because we sent her to collections. The dental board took up the case, which is against their charter.
Right.
Then the dental board found against me because I hadn't pulp tested one of the teeth that was being extracted, even though the note said that the tooth was non-restorable and had fractured mid-root.
Okay.
So that one had to be extracted no matter what. So, no, 4 teeth to be extracted because that one had to be extracted. The other 3 were root canal crown or root canal and bridge. And so the denture cost, the partial denture cost $1,200 plus extractions. And they fined me $14,000.
Wow.
Which is enrichment of the patient, which again is against the law. They literally broke every single law to file me. But whenever I was told, okay, you can bring this before a judge, I said, let's do it.
Right.
And then my lawyer said, let's not do it because they're not required to listen to the judge anyway. Right. So, and that was eye-opening for me. They're not elected, so you can't do anything against them by getting them unelected. Because they're appointees, they're not able to be sued because I tried to sue them because they broke the law.
Yeah.
And there were actually 5 points that my lawyer pulled out, and he said, they can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do this. This is all illegal. But there's nothing you can do to hold them to the fire. And I was like, well, let's sue them. No, you can't sue them. They're a government appointee.
Right.
You have to sue the governor. And at that point, I was like, yeah, you can't fight City Hall. I'm going to pay the $14,000. And I think it ended up being $18,000 after paying for the lawyer and everything else. And so they got away with breaking the law because they had been instructed that they must find dentists because they weren't finding enough dentists.
Yeah. It must have been right after their sunset.
It was. Okay. It was early 2019, I think, and I think they were sunset in 2014.
I was thinking it was back in like late
Might
90s,
have been
early 2000s.
No, because I was in dental school when they were sunsetted, and I graduated in 2012, and I think it wasn't until 2 years later that they came out with their new guidance and stuff like that. But you probably know better than I do.
They had a sunset review. I think they have a sunset review. What is it, every 15 years, 10 years, something like that? Where the one previous to that, because I remember that sunset, that sunset review, but the one prior to that, they were actually closed.
Right.
There was no dental board for a period of time, and because they failed to do their job. So when it happened again, they were sharply criticized by the Sunset Committee for, again, failure to fulfill that mission.
Absolutely.
So,
and so, I guess they got creative.
Yeah.
But I used to defend the board to everyone. I was like, hey, they keep us on the straight and narrow, la, la, la. And I don't anymore. Yeah. I highly suspect that, they also had a new president.
Okay.
You know the one I'm talking about.
Possibly.
Let's not say his name on.
Yeah, no, let's not do that. It's funny. You Google the dental board.
Periodontist.
It's funny. You Google the dental board and they have a 1-star review. But I think it's probably true with every state's dental board. I mean, they're the government. The government sucks. So
if a job can be done less well, then it can be done by the government.
I think about that. Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Absolutely, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, but I used to say that.
So what was it like? What was it like knowing how to help but not being allowed to? Because I know there were some times where you went in and you're like, you saw something, you're like, oh, this is so easy to correct.
Yeah.
But that's not your duty.
Well, I actually got in trouble. And
that doesn't surprise me at all.
No, I actually got in trouble over this, and it was an accident. We went to a meeting down Austin. All the investigators came in, and which that didn't happen very often. So we always took the opportunity to go out and the after meeting. So we're at the after meeting, sharing stories, and sitting around just catching up because all of us were former law enforcement. We were cops for the dental board. I mean, they actually carried our commission. I wore a badge and gun every time I walked into a dental office. It wasn't out in the open, so people didn't see that I had a gun, but we were always armed when we walked into a dental office. Today, they don't use cops, and it's probably because of my colleagues and I. They probably wore the board out and said, no more cops. but we're at this after party and sharing stories, and I mentioned, oh yeah, I mean, people call me at the office all the time and ask this and that, and I tell them this and that.
You're not allowed to give information out.
No.
Isn't that interesting? I would like to follow the law. How do I follow the law? I can't tell you that, but I can arrest you if you break it.
Right. So they said, "Oh man, you can't do that." And I mean, everybody got quiet, and I'm like, "Uh-oh." And I looked at my boss, and I'm like, "Am I in trouble?" And she goes, "Hey, let's go outside for a minute." And we went in a parking lot, and said, "Yeah, we can't give legal advice." I'm like, well, that's weird. I never thought I was giving legal advice. Never intended to give legal advice.
Right. I just told them this is what the statute says, and
Well, yeah. So and people would ask me, "Hey, how does the board see this and that and the other thing?" And I'm like, "Well, look, I can't speak for the board, but here's my experience, and here's how I've seen them, address other cases like this. So based on that, it seems like the board is expecting this and that." And they said, "Well, we can't do that either." And I'm like, "Well, why not?" That famous question we were talking about at breakfast. Why not? I mean, it's not like we're going to put ourselves out of business. They're like, well, we can't be transparent. We have laws and rules that prohibit us from being transparent, and since, we can't give legal advice. And I'm like, and I'm thinking, in my brain, I went right back to that reptilian brain, right back to that teenage childhood mindset that I hate authority.
Well, not just that, but right is right and wrong is wrong, and this isn't right.
Right.
It's funny though that you had that experience, because the vast majority of law enforcement officers have a similar experience.
Yeah.
You are actually, I hate to say required, but dishonesty is not an uncommon practice when you're investigating something.
Right.
Well, can I put it that way?
You're right.
Your job is to get the person talking and trusting you, and then basically to be a rat. That's literally your job.
I could lie to you, but you lie to me, and that's obstruction of justice.
Exactly. Isn't that
Listen
interesting?
To that obstruction of justice.
That is, obstruction of my lie with your lie.
Yeah.
It's concerning, and you look at it and you say, okay, well, I understand why this is.
Yeah.
Criminals are dishonest.
Right.
Cops should think everyone I meet is probably being dishonest.
Well, they say the best cops think like criminals.
Right.
And there's a fine line between a cop and a criminal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, some people there's no line.
Well,
but
so that going back to that thing that happened, that after party,
right,
and that conversation in the parking lot. I loved my boss. We were street cops together, so we had a long, rich history together, and and an incredible trust between the two of us. And I said, "Hey, I don't understand, but I'm with you. I'll go along on this," And from that point forward, it's kind of like it lit a fire that I just couldn't put out. I kept asking why, and I thought, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. What if I can somehow share my experience? Is there any value in my experience? Would anybody pay me for it? And, I started, thinking about how I could work with dentists instead of for dentists along the same mission that the board is tasked with. Mm-hmm. But now I do it on my terms.
Well, and it best serves your why, because your why was, I want to help people. I want to serve people. And I can only imagine how that felt, knowing that, you take this job and you're like, I'm going to use all of my background to help to keep these guys from doing things that, will get them in trouble.
Yeah.
Someone calls me and they say, hey, can I do this? I'm going to say, well, in the past, the board has done this, this, and this. You make your own decision on that. But to bring it to the level where even giving them that information is heretical, I can only imagine the internal turmoil that it caused you, because you were uniquely suited to help, but weren't allowed to.
Yeah. Yeah. I love my life today. I do, because I don't give legal advice. Not ever. I just share my experience with people. And sometimes I have clients that don't follow my suggestions, and I'm cool with that. God gave you a brain, you make your own decisions. And when you go through some shit because you made a wrong decision, I'm going to sit at the table with you, and we'll do it together, and, we'll walk this out. So you do you, and I'll just be here to support you. And, I work with amazing people, and sometimes people get it wrong, or sometimes bad things happen to good people, and I see that a lot. I'm busy. I'm always very busy, just doing my thing. It makes me happy, taking care of my people. So, it kills me when I have a client that goes through some bad stuff. I was out for some time this last year. I had a pretty major surgery, and I was out, and man, I had a patient. A patient. You guys are my patients,
Right.
No, I had a client that lost a patient, died in the office.
It's tough.
Yeah, and it killed me because he knew I was going through some stuff, and he didn't call me. I didn't find out about it till 3 months later, and I was like, man, that just...
And you couldn't be there to help him.
Yeah. And, he was okay with that. He goes, man, I didn't fault you. I know you were going through some stuff, and, I didn't know what it was, but I know that you weren't available. But you know what? You gave me the skills, the knowledge, the systems, and I just leveraged that. And, he had to go through, make that mandatory report to the board. He was investigated, and he recently was cleared.
That's good.
Man, I was like, man, thank God, because he's a good dude. Well,
you bring up an interesting point. A lot of this stuff, it's not really right or wrong. It's mitigation of risk.
That's right.
So I brought up that case with myself earlier. So we did PRF in my practice. So in the state of Texas, phlebotomists are not required to be licensed. Dentists are not allowed to oversee someone who is licensed doing something that they are not licensed in.
Yeah.
So I actually had all of my assistants trained in phlebotomy, and none of them were licensed, but you don't have to be in the state of Texas. And so they would do my blood draws. One of the things the board found me guilty of was them giving injections. Now, a blood draw is not an injection.
Yeah.
In fact, that's an absolute falsehood. So they found me guilty of having my subordinates give injections which were not allowed under their license.
Impermissible delegation. And I'm not going to cite the rule number.
You can.
No.
But you see what I'm saying, though? Yeah. That's one of those areas where it's a mitigation of risk thing, because you read the law and you're like, okay, I know exactly what this law says. Mm-hmm. But in truth, the board can call it whatever they want. My assistants were more highly trained than I was in phlebotomy, and it was safer for my patients. The only thing they didn't do was get the license, and they didn't get the license because they didn't need the license. Mm-hmm. And I responsibly had them trained formally, but I still get fined. Mm-hmm. So, and I do truly see where they're coming from on that one, but when you look at the rest of the case, you're like, okay, this was kind of a witch hunt.
Common sense.
It kind of does, especially when with all the other stuff they took on a case they literally were not legally allowed to take on, period, because they cannot mediate price disputes. Yeah. That's against their regulations. Right. And then they fined me for not doing something that really didn't need to be done because the tooth wasn't restorable. So why do you pulp test the tooth when it's cracked in half and non-restorable? But they fined me for that. And in reality, I think there was a personal grudge because the new I don't know what they call him, the new head of the board, whoever that is, was a periodontist, and I placed a lot of implants, and I preached to general dentists that they need to be placing implants. And maybe it was that. Maybe it was kind of a territorial dispute, so to speak.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Or maybe it was just that he's the brand new president. He had just been sworn on 2 days before the case came up. It wasn't his fault they took up the case. He may have not have known the regulations and the rules. He may not have known that they illegally took this case up. I don't know. I don't know how much training they receive or what, but case never should have gone through.
Yeah.
I should never have been fined. But is what it is.
Yeah.
And you have to, I was so angry at the time, so angry because it was just so unjust. And at the same time, retrospectively, I can look back at it and say, you know, just like I might not know all the dental laws, they don't know the dental laws either. A lot of them are just dentists, they're hygienists, they're Joe Q public, just civilians, so to speak. There's no real lawyers on the board. There is a lawyer who advises the board.
Yeah, they actually have staff lawyers.
Right.
But
But they have to ask for the advice.
Right.
And if they don't know that what they're doing is wrong, how do they ask for the advice? So it just seems like the entire system is a great big old dumpster fire, and that dumpster's filled with feces.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's no question about that.
So,
Yeah. You know, I always tell people, look, there's the way the rules are written, and then there's the way that it's enforced. And
Right.
you need to know the way that it's enforced, because the way that it's enforced may not be in black and white at all. In fact, if you look at every rule and regulation, the way the rules are written are just, they're horrible. Our state board rules here in Texas, most of them need to be rewritten.
well, a lot of times rules are written ambiguously on purpose. I mean, let's face the honest truth. A lot of regulations that cops use to stop people in traffic stops, it's because you saw someone driving, it looks suspicious. And some of that comes down to profiling.
Yep.
And say what you want about profiling, the word prejudice used to not be a detrimental adjective.
Yeah.
It meant someone had prejudged or come to a conclusion based upon pre-existing evidence.
Right.
Currently, and that's the legal definition, if I'm not mistaken. Today, it means that you have come to unjust conclusions based on no evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, whenever you talk about prejudice in a case, I think it's important to separate that definition and distinction as to how the word is used, how the law is used,
Right.
versus what the word means versus how the law is written. And, you know, you have a traffic stop and you pull somebody over, oh, their taillight's out. You know, sometimes the tail light's not even out when you pull them over, you know. But I think a lot of it, because I have a friend who is profiled like that. It's funny. I had two friends coming over to my house in the same night. Both Indian. They're driving one behind the other. Cop signal comes on. Both pull over. Cop goes to the first guy. And he says, have you been drinking? Now, these guys neither one of them drank. They're both Muslim. The first guy's like, no. And he's very nervous. And the cop looks over. He says, there's a beer can in the ditch. And the guy's like, that's not my beer can. I didn't drink that. And, you know, I didn't throw anything out of my window. You should have seen that. Second guy they go to, so he got fined. He got a ticket. I don't remember what the ticket was for, but they found something.
Some chicken shit, something or other.
Some chicken shit, something. They were giving him a ticket.
Yeah.
Second guy, go up to the second car. Hey, sir, you realize you were going a little bit fast tonight? Guy goes, dude, I am so sorry. What was the speed limit? Because I'm pretty sure I was going 45. He said, you were going 50. It is a 45. He's like, I get it. You got me. I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have. I do need to tell you before I give you permission to search my car, there are 3 guns in there. I have a CHL. May I reach for that and get it for you? Yeah, sure. Pulls out his wallet, hands it over to the police. Policeman looks at it, goes, what are you carrying? He says, dude, I just got, I think he just gotten a Walther PCP. Okay. So he's like, dude, do you want to see it?
Yeah.
You want to check it out? So he opens up his trunk. He's got a hatchback car, slides out a drawer. All of his guns are laid out with his ammunition and shit. The cop was on cloud 9, right?
Yeah, right.
Guess who didn't get a ticket?
Yeah. I could have guessed that.
So they were both stopped for driving while brown, right? Legitimately happens.
DWB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's something we don't talk about enough. You know, the charter for all police departments, the charter for all policing actions is not to prevent crime. It's to be seen so that crime doesn't occur. But it is to arrest or detain if a crime is suspected of having occurred. A lot of that comes down to profiling. If you see somebody who is sagging and they got 3 pairs of boxers on and they're walking into a store and there's a little old granny, you have to ask yourself, am I being prejudiced by saying this person's more likely to steal than the old granny who is at the cash register? Hell, you don't know. They could be working together. He could be the one distracting while she steals shit. It'd be a pretty good plan, right?
Right.
But the truth of the matter is that you have to use discrimination. You have to use prejudice. You have to use prejudgment. You have to use facts that exist on the ground. You have to use statistics, and you have to say which one of these people most likely would be engaged in a crime, and would just talking to them make them move down the road. That's how I would think.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that's actually how you think whenever you're doing it, but it seems to make sense to me.
Yeah.
So speak on that a little bit and speak to it specifically as it looks like in dentistry, because we both know that happens. There's profiling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So
I've seen it.
if you have a dentist who has a complaint against them, what are some of the red flags? What are some of those profiling marks that says, yeah, this person is someone we should really look into? Or do you really do that? And I mean systemically, not necessarily you as a guy, Tink.
I think systemically, I think it's more isolated than it is systemic. But, I mean, did I see racism? Oh, yeah, of course I did. You've got a name that nobody can pronounce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, of course. Did I see Tim Donald or Joe Smith get away with some pretty heinous stuff that there's no way the average dentist would get away with? Yeah, I saw that a lot too.
A little bit of GOB going on there.
Good old boys club,
Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, I got to say, just the culmination of all these different things, that conversation in the parking lot with my boss, that, the way that they handled certain cases. I remember some of my cases that, I put a lot of work into, and I could have put a lot more into it, but they told me, no, we're going to just take his license based on this. Meanwhile, I had, several felonies that I could have pursued against the doctor.
Right.
I said, no, we got this guy. Don't worry about it. And they got his license back, 2 years probated suspension, $1,000 fine that he didn't have to pay for a year. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. So
you're just making me feel more and more like my case was a witch hunt.
It may have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody got a burr. Didn't like what they saw, But I got to speak to the other side of that too, though. I mean,
absolutely.
I saw several instances where people got away with things that they clearly should not have. If they had understood and knew what I knew from the perspective that I had, the conversations that I had with the dentist, with, my experience and my gut feeling about what's going on, and just other things that I saw, that there's no way that should have slid. I've worked with a lot of clients, and I've had clients that are board members. I've had clients that are board reviewers, and it's cool to be able to have an honest, open dialogue with them. They get a small snapshot of a case, and they have to, based on a very little amount of information, decide, is this guy a good egg or a bad egg? And oftentimes they get it right. Sometimes they get it wrong. And so situations where they get it wrong, that really bothered me. I think back, I forget where this concept came from, but, where the concept that we let an infinite number of bad guys go. So we don't, rather than put an innocent guy to death.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of that same concept, you can apply that to, the concept of justice. And in this particular case, we're talking about, justice within the regulatory system. I think some of those board reviewers, if they had more information about the person's character and, their everyday demeanor and whatnot, that it would maybe either be harder or softer if they had a little bit more information.
Well, and that makes that's very salient in my case, because most people in dentistry know who I am.
Yeah.
And so that does cause a spotlight.
Yeah, sure.
So when you left, I know that you were already struggling with the ethics not meeting the expectations. Did you struggle with identity when you left? Because you left enforcement, right? And this is really what you've been doing for years. You've been, as a Leo, then as a board, examiner, investigator, what have you. Yeah. I know when I left dentistry, I actually went through probably 2 months, just vast depression, which is funny, but you almost didn't know who you were. I didn't know who I was. And it sounds dumb to say now.
Yeah. I did go through some of that, but not because of a sense of loss from leaving the board. It was because I literally turned in my badge.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you've ever carried a badge in your wallet and been a part of that family, you can't understand what it's like when you turn in your shield and leave the family. That caused me more consternation, I would say, than anything. Because it's like I quit the family, and that door that I thought would be open, that I could have that dialogue with all my homies. Bam, that door slammed shut because I was now an outsider. I was now on your team and not on their team.
Right.
And
well, I imagine there has to be some of that.
Yeah, I want to say, I got to say, I had a little PTSD between that and some stuff that happened in my personal life, all kind of about the same time. I'm like,
but was it all Leos, or was it mainly the board investigators that felt that way?
I went through that with some, when I left the agency I was with, when I worked as a patrol deputy, I really felt it then. But I felt it again a second time when I left the board, and that door slammed shut on me. Because, I always had this idea. Maybe I watched just too many John Grisham movies and whatnot, but I always thought that when I left the board that, we'd still be able to talk and kind of keep those back channels open.
Right.
They're doing their thing their way. I'm doing my thing my way. We both have the same mission. And, I would never divulge something to, hurt one of my clients. But, man, I see things that they will never see. Man, if they saw
they knew a
stuff,
tenth of the shit that you see.
Oh, yeah. And the funny thing is, I'm only working with great people who want to work with me. Nobody has to work with me. Unlike the board, somebody gets a complaint, you have to deal with the board. You don't get a choice otherwise. But I certainly have a choice. But man, that door slammed shut on me, and I was like, well, I guess I'm going solo, and I'm just going to do my thing and figure out what that is. And getting started, I reached out to some of the very dentists that I had investigated that I thought, that I believed were probably good people who just made bad decisions, or maybe just didn't make good decisions.
The best decision.
Critical, yeah. So I reached out to some of those people, and all it took was, one or two of those people to say, you know what, you're freaking crazy, but I'll take you up on that. Because I reached out and said, hey, man, I crossed over. I'm on your side. Would it be a benefit to you to hire me, come into your practice, look at your operation, and help you make it more resistant to our manage your risks, risk management.
Right.
And I don't know why. I look back on the name of my company as Dental Compliance Specialist. I should have went with a different name.
It should have been Risk Management Specialist.
Yeah, I should have called it Risk Management, because it's a sexier language than compliance. Because I think of compliance, and I look back to COVID, and I think all those cops, arresting people for being on the beach kind of thing. And it just, in my own mind, puts up
in the sunshine.
Yeah, right. By yourself, nobody else on the beach. And you're going to jail on the beach,
I did a video that went a little viral there. We went out to the beach during COVID.
Okay.
And I did a video, out of Galveston.
Okay.
With my mask on, shoulder deep in the water, with the waves hitting me. Just talking about how safe I felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit of irony.
Right.
So I was just trying to poke the bear, get people to question the narrative and to make them understand that the things they were been told didn't make sense, and that they were doctors and they knew better.
Right.
I don't care what bureaucracy told people to wear. Well, it was Fauci. He told people to wear cloth masks.
That's ridiculous.
There's a whole thing we could get into there. I should do another. I should just do another podcast that just talks about everything that's messed up with our government and all the conspiracies and stuff. I'm afraid I would have my house firebombed though.
Yeah, right. We get shut down.
So
invaded by the government.
So on this topic where we are, I think the most important question for you to answer is, why does the system wait until everything is broken before stepping in?
You know, I wish I had an answer for that. I don't. They're very rich in their customs. You know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. That's the way we do things. You know, don't bug the system. Don't question authority.
You ever read Robert Frost?
No.
There's a poem called Wall Mending. And he says, so I teased my neighbor and I asked, why is it we build a wall? My cows won't cross over to eat your apples, nor your apples my cows. My neighbor thought about it for a while and looked at me and he said, good fences build good neighbors. And it was his father's saying, and so he would not go back upon it. A lot of times we follow tradition unthinkingly simply because it's tradition. We never question the why behind it. Or that old joke about the lady who cooks the pot roast.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know the one I'm talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did we cut it? Well, Pam was too sharp.
Yeah.
You know, and it's true. A lot of times, even in dentistry, even in science, we follow. We had some great discussions about this morning. How we follow tradition because it's simply the way that we've always looked at something or the way that something's always been done. And real change only takes place when someone questions that narrative and says, but why?
Yeah.
You know, and maybe I just didn't grow up. I've always been that guy, a lot like you, who is that annoying kid who says, but why?
Yeah.
But why?
Question everything.
Now, I want to know. I want to know the why behind it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's tragic, but, I mean, it's to be expected.
Uh-huh.
So when you started working for dentists, and you've kind of spoken about this a little bit, what was the initial reaction? Did it take you a while for them to build trust? I mean, you were the guy who comes in from the board to penalize them, right, and to investigate them. Now you're saying, I'm the guy who's going to keep you out of trouble. Was there a hard sale there, or did people resonate with the idea?
You know, it seemed like people kind of resonated with that. I mean, you know, what the heck? This guy's crazy enough to quit a perfectly good job and come
leave security, leave a paycheck,
leave that pension behind. And, you know, just walk away from everything to, you know. I didn't realize I don't see myself as a hero.
I didn't realize you had to leave your pension. We actually talked about that with cops who get in trouble and losing their pension and everything. And I mean, that was a big move for you.
Yeah, it was.
So maybe you were just the right kind of crazy. People were like, okay.
I got to think that was it. You know, I burned the bridge. You know, I let my license lapse. And, you know, I just out of curiosity, I looked up on the TCOL website one day just to figure out what it would take to get my license back. If I ever followed that itch and actually went and got my badge back. And, you know, I was 30 days short of that time that I would have been grandfathered in to have a permanent license.
Mm-hmm.
So if I went back today, I'd have to go through the police academy all over again.
Interesting.
30 days. But I walked away. I surrendered my commission, and I just burned the bridges. And I said, I've got to make this work. You know, when I had such an incredible incredible faith and a peace when I left the board to go and do this. And the fact that, you know, I told my boss what I was going to do, and they said, that's absolutely nuts. But I had such an incredible peace about it. The real story here is the day that I decided to pull the plug. My wife and I have been talking about this, and I figured, hey, you know, I'm going to maybe do this consulting gig. Let me get about 2 more years of experience before I pull the plug, because it didn't really feel like I was an expert yet. I mean, I felt like I was good at what I did, but I could have been better. I wanted to have more experience. But once we started talking about it, I was like, you know, I'll go in and investigate another case with a good dentist and a good assistant and a good staff. And, you know, this patient was probably full of crap, but I still had to present the facts as I saw them. I went in. There was one case in particular that I had to go and investigate in person because the patient alleged that the dental assistant permanently seated the crown in her mouth, which is a violation of state law. It's practicing dentistry without a license. And I went and interviewed the dentist and staff, and I couldn't prove that, it happened as the patient claimed. But the dentist, in his records, admitted that he had, done sedation on a patient. And looking back, he didn't have a license or permit to do that. So
completely different thing, but...
Well, and there was nothing I could do to sweep that under the rug. I couldn't do anything to make that situation better. I couldn't do anything to make it worse. It is what it is. But I had a feeling in my gut that this guy was going to be raked over the coals, and I was like, dang, this sucks. And I walked out to my car, and I guess I forgot an important part of the story. Leading up to this, my wife was a teacher. She was a gifted and talented teacher. And this was, 2011? There was funding cuts that were happening in education. And, gifted and talented is not a federally mandated requirement for schools.
Right.
But they have federal mandates in place for special needs. So the funding for her program was cut. And the end of her contract, they weren't going to renew. So we had about 4 months left of her contract. That means 4 months that we would get a paycheck for her contract. And I said, maybe this is the time to pull out now and I can work my butt off and try and build a business and hopefully replace your income before it runs out. That's our safety net. I had no safety net. I had no retirement. I had no savings. My wife and I had 5 kids that we adopted, and we had nothing in savings. I just had the faith that this was the right time, the right thing to do, and to make a difference for people. Doc, I replaced our income in 3 months.
That's
both
amazing.
Our incomes. Because, wasn't afraid of starving. I knew how to work. I grew up in the Midwest. Work ethic was not an issue for me. I was working since I was 17. And, working long hours and stuff, not a problem. But I was doing the right thing, working with the right people to try and make a difference. And I was focused on that. It's never been about the money for me. I like that I make more money, don't get me wrong, but it's never been, and it still isn't about the money. I can look back on the things that I've done with the clients that I've worked with. I know that it's literally saved patients' lives. It's saved the dentist's lives. Hell, I had 2 dentists that committed suicide when I was investigating them. And, I wore that with me because I was the investigator on the case. And I knew from my vantage point that those 2 dentists were not going to lose their license like they thought they did. And that's when I began to realize that, holy crap, this is stressful for dentists. They do have PTSD. And I thought, really, how can a dentist have PTSD? You fix teeth.
Right.
What's stressful about that? But I got to understanding the business of dentistry and how dentists think, how dentists work, the struggles that they face. And I was like, man, it became real to me, and I could relate to that given my own life experience. And I thought, man, I'm going to do what I can to make life a little easier for all of us. And, I think that's what I do today.
Well, it paid off. This is good. So what do most people fundamentally misunderstand about compliance?
They think everything's about OSHA. OSHA is a small part of what I do. I can't do compliance without addressing that. But, even during COVID, since in the last 15 years or so that I've been consulting, I can count on one hand the number of actual OSHA cases involving a dental practice.
And most people get in trouble over Practice Act, not over OSHA.
Yeah, right. It's all dental board related stuff. It's Medicaid fraud and abuse. It's DEA issues. It's, the dental board stuff encapsulates a lot. It's everything from advertising issues to, somebody doesn't like the color of your shingle, all the way up to, you taking chances and doing crazy things in the anesthesia space. Yeah.
And the funny thing is you don't have to look hard to find lack of compliance. I was, I'm of a certain age, so I was at the doctor the other day, having a doctor's appointment that I have to have every 10 years. And,
So you're over 50, huh?
yeah. And so thinking to myself how much fun this is going to be and laughing to myself that I'm talking to a doctor who treats the other hole in the human body.
Yeah.
So I'm passing by a dentist's office that's in the same building, and I passed by the front door, and I realized, and I thought about going in and saying something just to keep him safe. And I was like, he should know better. And that wasn't terribly charitable of me. There's no names on the door. Guys, you don't have your under in your dental practice name, if you don't have every doctor who practices there even 5 seconds every month, you're in violation.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, it's the thing that upsets me the most about the whole board case is I was such a stickler for the law, and I read every single one, and I tried to dot my I's and cross my T's. And then whenever everything came out, I was like, they're not following any of this.
Yeah.
And it just kind of made me crazy.
I tell my clients, look, don't tell the board that you work with me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have Google reviews. I don't have testimonials from people because I'm such a stickler for confidentiality. I don't want it to slip out that so-and-so works with team.
Right.
It's nobody.
Or if you're telling a story for someone to say, oh, so-and-so works with, I bet it was him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I never interface with the board with a client. And I've got to tell you, as an experience share, I don't give legal advice, but as an experience share, I would never deal with any regulatory agency without an attorney.
Absolutely.
Never, under any circumstance. I don't care how innocuous it is. Because you just don't know when those situations can go sideways.
The cops are not the only ones who, by their job, are required to lie to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why do checklists and binders fail?
Because people just pencil whip the checklist. Yeah, because they're afraid to be honest and acknowledge and do something when there's something that's actually not correct, not proper. It comes out in a checklist.
It's funny because I've seen that. Whenever I was in an office consulting with someone, hey guys, if you're going to pencil whip your checklist to say things were done, write each entry in a different ink. Don't use the same pen.
Yeah.
And don't have the same person do it.
Yeah.
Not giving you ideas on how to create fraud better, but if you're going to do it, make it not so obvious.
Look, if you're going to go to prison for something, make sure you got a good story behind it.
Right.
I mean, imagine sitting in the jail cell next to a bunch of murderers and everybody's bragging about why they're in jail, and you're having to tell them, well, I committed a HIPAA violation.
Right.
There's just nothing sexy about going to jail for a HIPAA violation.
No. Well, I mean, unless there was a really good story behind it. Really good story.
It better be a good story, though.
So how much of compliance failures is systems versus leadership?
Man. It's probably more leadership, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so for our practice, and again, I did get reported to the board and I did lose, but in our practice, what I did, take this guidance with a grain of salt, but to make sure that we were up on everything that we're supposed to do, whenever we were supposed to review our OSHA records, whenever we were supposed to do our radiography, whenever we were supposed to do my DEA license, the time limits for having certain CE done, things like that.
Yeah.
I put them on a calendar and I made them email my entire team.
Yeah.
And so someone was telling me, hey, by the way, Doc, you got a reminder that you got to go do such and such.
I love that.
Because I knew my team wanted to make sure I didn't get in trouble, but I also knew they were busy. And if you can make something automated that just says, hey,
hello, yeah,
don't forget,
yeah,
that helped me out a lot. But what I did find with the binders and things like that, and the reason I moved to the email system and the calendar, is I found that even when you had somebody whose job description was detailed as they need to go over this specific thing, it's generally, I've got a theory about lists. Lists are great, but lists are better if every 2 weeks you flip the list over. And the reason is, I used to call that bottoms up day in my practice. Every 2 weeks, I'd make them take their to-do list and flip them over. They had to rewrite everything from bottom to top, and they had to do it that way for the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
It's because everything you don't want to do gets put at the bottom of your list.
Yeah.
And when you start doing a list, you work from the top to the bottom, and so the stuff on the bottom never gets done. So when you flip the list, all of a sudden, I have to do this now because it's on the top of the list.
Oh, that's beautiful. I don't know if y'all got this, but I got this. I'm going to make a fundamental change in our system.
Really?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
That makes me feel great.
That's a great insight. And it's funny because as you said that, I'm like, duh. It seems obvious now that you said it. And I think that's true for a lot of dentists. That, you know, when we talk about something and it seems so simple, they're like,
right.
Duh. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I think in the universe at large, you know the truth when you hear it.
Yeah.
And you know the truth because when you hear it, you're like, why am I so stupid? I never thought of that. Because it's just universal truth, right?
Yeah, right.
Just get it done. Don't worry about the answer because it just happens. So compliance isn't about rules. It's about fear.
It's about optics.
So I thought you would get that statement. So explain.
No, those manuals that you have, they're not for you. They're for the people that you interface with from the government. They expect to see that stuff. Policies and procedures are not for you. They're for the government. They want to see that. They expect you to see that. Do they have policies and procedures? Absolutely. Do they follow them? Absolutely not. But just like you have policies, but if you have policies and you don't follow them, then they bend you over for that. But if you don't have policies,
unless you play golf with them on Sundays,
right? Yeah.
So
I swear that's how some of those dentists.
I think that's how some of them don't get in trouble. I mean,
yes.
What was that dude? He fraudulently billed Medicaid for orthodontics more than the entire state of California. Was that 2011, 2010?
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah, but about 2009, 2010, yeah.
I just remember it coming out when I was in dental school. I was like, how can one dentist bill Medicaid for more than the entire state of California? And it just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Are they practicing again?
I've heard he is.
I thought so too. Yeah. So begs the question, who did he play golf with and buy steak dinners for on Sunday?
Bought a lot of steak dinners.
I bet he did.
Yeah. Well.
So
it had an amusement park.
What's that?
It had an amusement park. So, there was probably some VIP passes passed along there.
Right. I didn't know they had an amusement park. I mean, when you've got California money.
Yeah. Right.
Oh boy. Okay. So we've got mid-episode. I want to do something a little bit different. We're going to call this the Dental Fear Index. Okay. So here's the rules. I am going to give you with a real world scenario and without hedging, split second,
okay,
you have to give me a number between 1 and 10, 1 being noise, 10 being career ending. Okay.
Yep.
Because I want dentists to know what things they're afraid of that they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And what things are not afraid of that they should be.
Yeah.
So, you ready for this?
Okay. Boy, this should be fun. By the way, I've not heard any of this before, so this is a surprise to me.
Yeah, I usually send my guests the list, but I want to surprise you with this one.
Nice. Well played.
Thank you, sir. So, scenario number 1. OSHA manual has not been updated for 2 years.
Yeah, you can write a check to fix that problem.
Nope. Numbers, then explanation.
Oh, I'm
1
sorry.
to 10, noise or career ending.
Yeah, that's going to be like probably 1 or 2.
Okay. In your experience, what are the repercussions like, unless they find something else?
Man, first of all, your chance of ever getting caught is like slim to none.
Someone has to report you, and usually they're on your team.
Yeah, right. Or we're on your team. They're disgruntled, and somebody bothers to look into it. Yeah. So, in the few times that it happens every year, I mean, I've recently had a conversation on ethics with the dentist that actually does a lot of lectures on ethics, and he mentioned something about, when a problem's not a problem if you can write a check for it, it's a business expense.
You're absolutely right.
I'm like, that's profound.
It's my same philosophy.
Yeah. So, yeah, you can write a check for that, make that problem go away.
And it doesn't mean I didn't try to do my best to get everything right, but I didn't have to worry about my body spontaneously digesting itself from my midsection.
Yeah.
If I could write a check.
Right.
And I have to say, the smaller the check, the happier I was. But
of course.
Okay. So someone goes into your break room. There's not a single employment poster on the walls. 1 to 10.
0. off the scale. I have never heard of a case where a sole issue was not having those labor laws posted in your break room.
Now, let's be honest, folks. All of these things that are number one, you got 15 of them going on, they're looking deeper.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So, there are HIPAA training gaps. One of my employees couldn't make their HIPAA training. They're 2 weeks late. 1 to 10.
Yeah, you can fix. Sorry, I'm gonna say 2 or 3. You can write a check and fix that problem though.
Right. I forgot to renew my license, and I'm 3 days late, and I just did a crown prep when I found out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're up in the 8 and 9 range.
Okay,
Yeah.
guys. That's one to think about here.
Look, if you're successful, there are people out there that don't like that, and they'll do what they can to take you down. I spent a lot of time in Plano. I had a case with one dentist that hated his neighbor across the hall, wanted to put him out of business, was watching, saw that his license was expired by like 3 days.
He must have been checking the registry every day.
Oh, yeah. So he filed a complaint. I got it. I had to go up, pull records to show that he was, in fact, doing dentistry those 3 days that he was expired, his license lapsed.
And it was exactly 3 days. That was a perfect example.
No, it really was. I'm like, that was insane. They raked him over the coals because not only was that practicing dentistry, but now we got insurance fraud because he wasn't qualified, licensed to do dentistry in the first place. So now he committed insurance fraud by, yikes. Yeah.
Okay, so minor paperwork errors.
I guess it kind of depends on what paperwork we're talking about.
Paperwork when you got a report. So whenever you get a complaint, you have a ton of paperwork. I just hired a lawyer to do mine.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't want to mess with that.
Well, no, and it puts a buffer between you and the board so they can't come and harass you at the office. Smart move.
So 1 to 10. Depends on the paperwork.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the paperwork.
All right.
I mean, if we're talking about something like, missing a consent form, yeah, it's not going to end your career, but it's going to cause you some problems.
All right. So I'm a dentist. I know that all my notes have to be very specific. So I write up some notes and I have my team copy and paste them. There are 2 issues there. So the first issue is copy and paste notes. The second issue is letting the staff write your clinical notes. How big of an issue?
It depends on what happens with that record afterward, because it happens day in and day out all the time. It's when you get caught and it's not accurate that it's a problem. And then you're subject to the whims of whoever's interpreting that case. It could be a 5 or it could be an 8 or 9.
So let me tell you what I did. So I wrote macros for every single code. I limited the codes in my practice. I think we had 58 codes because I did a whole lot of mostly comprehensive and surgical work. So there were a lot of codes we just never used.
Yeah.
I wrote a macro for every single one of my codes. Within that macro, let's say we were doing a filling. It would say, first of all, what tooth you're working on, what was the diagnosis, what was the treatment plan, and they would have to do a drop-down menu. So everything was typed correctly, everything was in its place. Then it would say what material was used. I had all the brands that we had listed, how much material was used. That was from my own records because I liked to establish what the COGS were, cost of goods sold. So if I knew that it took 3 grams of composite to do an MOD filling, I knew how much that filling cost me. So it's just a, business management thing. But there were sections in between all of those parts where it was like, how did the patient tolerate this treatment? And were there any untoward effects or anything that we need to speak to the patient about? And then that section had to be written. I would write that section myself. And then I would have a note for every procedure that was between 2 and 3 pages long. And it went down to the amount of time that we used desensitizing agent if we did it, the amount of time bonding agent was allowed to stay on, whether we used a combination bonding technique where we would individually bond the dentin or etch the dentin versus the enamel. And it was very, very thorough.
Mm-hmm.
When my lawyers saw it, they said they were the most thorough notes they had ever seen in a case.
Yeah.
But that was essentially copy-pasted notes with sections interspersed throughout them that were handwritten, because I knew that there was one case where a dentist was copying and pasting notes that I had learned about in dental school. And what they did is they looked at all the notes and they're exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So my thinking was plagiarism is 80%. So if I have 30 or 40% of my note that's clearly different every single time, then at the very least I can make an argument that says even plagiarism is 80%. These are my own notes.
Yeah.
I'm 30% different on every single note.
You know, I don't necessarily have a concern with a cut and paste. If it's, you know, there's only so many ways to say that you did the same
right.
thing.
If they're well written and they're thorough.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, look at like a pediatric dentist, for example. You know, if they specialize in only taking hospital cases and referrals, you know, they're dealing with, you know, basically full mouth rehabs.
Right. And they have to be doing soap in addition to whatever their normal notes are then.
Right.
So I think all dentists should be doing soap, just period. But
yeah, right. Yeah, no, I agree. No, I mean, there's only so many ways to say that you did the same thing for every patient. I mean, cut and paste is fine, but you got to go in and make those tweaks where it's necessary.
Right. So my system was pretty decent the way I had it set up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, if you're using the same note templates that you had 3 years ago, 5 years ago,
maybe change them up a little
bit.
Come on,
you got to update your stuff. You know, I mean, update as you go.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no way, if you're paying attention to what you're doing, that you should be using the same notes that you had 3 years ago.
And if you're a dentist that's worth a shit, you probably do everything pretty much specifically exactly the same way because it's standards, you know? So, okay, so 1 to 10. About a 3, 4 maybe, depending.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's something that becomes scrutinized by the state board, by Medicaid, even by commercial payer. You know, it's funny sometimes, you know, I get phone calls from people that, you know, they're getting an audit by a commercial payer. They're like, you know, it's a headache, it's irritating. Yeah, it's irritating, but at the end of the day, you know, they just want their money back. They're just going to, you know, bend you over, take some money back. You just need to go along with it, you know.
So I do want to bring something up specific on that line, and that is addendums. So one of the things people may not think about is it is illegal to change a clinical note. But it's not illegal to add an addendum.
Correct.
It is suspect to add an addendum sometimes if the board's already wanting to find something against you. Mm-hmm. I actually got fined as part of my process. I added an addendum to call their attention to another note made by the receptionist about the patient being a smoker, because they had also, when everything came out and they're making their complaint, they were like, oh yeah, and I heard for a couple of days afterwards or whatever. Yeah. I was like, it's because she was smoking after the freaking extractions. And I was like, that's not my clinical note, but it's in my reception note. So I made an addendum and I said, see, note from such and such date from so-and-so, patient was smoking. Yeah. So I got fined for that. It's part of the, it was clearly marked addendum because Dentrix won't allow you to make an addendum without it saying it's an addendum.
Well, and that's great. It shouldn't. And please understand the difference between an amendment and an addendum.
Oh, please.
Yeah. Don't ever alter a note. But if you have to write an addendum to clarify a point because you have either because you cut and pasted something that wasn't actually accurate in retrospect, or you need to go back and clarify something because it's being called into question, don't ever go back and mess with that original note.
Right. Well, there are actually audit trails in most PMSs, and they'll know.
Oh, yeah.
Because they actually get access to your PMS. Yeah. It's not just notes you print out.
Right. Yeah. But if you need to quote something to set the record straight, then you need to copy and paste the part that's incorrect
Mhm.
in an addendum, an add-on note, and then clarify why the information was incorrect and state what is correct information in regard to that situation or that whatever. And of course, lock and sign your note.
So what I did was correct.
I believe so. Yeah.
One part they got me on that was correct. Like most dentists, did not sign all my notes every single day.
Yeah.
Sign your notes every day. Review your notes every day.
Yeah.
You know, and to be honest with you, I've worked at places where they were 6 and 8 months behind on a note, and there's no way in hell they remember.
I know.
And
you don't remember the next day. Come on.
So it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know.
I see both sides of that. I mean, there's only so many hours in a
So
day.
you're
You know.
too damn busy sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, and it's not even that you're too busy taking care of patients. It's all the other stuff that goes on. You know, Susie and Bob and Janet call in sick or walk out at lunchtime, don't come back, or
Mhm.
you know, you get a call from the daycare, go pick up your kids because they're sick midday, and you know, life happens.
So my recommendation to dentists on that one, and you can shoot me down here or not, but I recommend that every dentist has an admin day during the week, no matter what, simply because you want to be wearing a different hat when you're doing admin things than when you're doing clinical things, because frankly, your mind is clearer.
Yeah.
And if you can think as that role in your business, you're going to do a better job of it. And on your admin day, I recommend once a week you do the admin day. The chances are, frankly, guys, if someone makes a complaint, it's going to take a month to 2 months to come back to you anyway. And so there won't be a suspicious date on an addendum or you know, not an amendment. But I screwed that up because whenever I got the notice, I was like, oh, I better check my freaking notes. And that's the day I made the addendum, which is, I believe, why they added that on. Well, obviously, this guy didn't check his notes until afterwards. Well, there was a note. I was just telling you there's another note you need to look at. But I get that part.
Yeah.
And that part was my fault because I didn't catch that note whenever I was doing my admin day. That's my fault.
Well, so a couple of thoughts, but one,
Please.
you know, hey, we're all human. I mean, you got to review your notes. You have to, especially if you're delegating that to other people, because you need to know that it's a legal document. It's there to serve you. It's there to serve your memory, because you may have to go back and give testimony. And if you work and write your notes from that idea that my notes are here to serve me, I may have to recall information about this patient 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road for some sort of pending litigation against me or somebody else, that I need to have enough information in that record to help me recall, because you will not independently recall most things.
Mm-hmm.
I can recall having gone to court and I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was a ticket or something that somebody contested. And I think it was like public intoxication. And being a smart aleck, on the back of the ticket, my notes were saw drunk, arrested, same. In hindsight, that was
Too tongue in cheek.
Yeah, no, we used to joke about writing reports like that. So I actually did that. And when I got to court on this particular case, that was my note. And I had no independent recollection. And the case got thrown out because I had to testify on that. I was like, I have no independent recollection.
Absolutely.
So fortunately, I didn't have to sit on the stand, but the attorney,
and it's not always what you think it is. You know, I had one case where, and I don't know whatever happened with this because they never contacted me back. But we had the police ask for a patient's records in a wrongful death or a homicide or something. I don't really remember the specifics of it, but the patient had died, and they asked for dental records. And that's when it really struck me, man. These have to be accurate. This could be the only way someone can identify their loved one. And it had never hit me before that there was that level, other than protecting my license and making sure people knew I was doing things the right way. There was no thought on my part that, wow, this could be important in completely different ways. You know, it's just something I'd never thought about, you know.
Eye-opening.
It is. It is. And it's something you never want to happen, but it is what it is.
I would take as a client, I would take if I had a choice between somebody who's just out of dental school opening their own practice or working with a dentist that's got some life experience, been in the game for a little while, been knocked around by maybe the dental board, and know that they're not bulletproof, I'd work with that guy over the newbie. Because the newbie thinks he knows it all.
100%. Don't confuse them with the facts. Their minds is made up.
Yeah.
So, all right. So
the second point, though.
Yeah.
Better cut that out because as soon as I said that, I forgot what it was.
No sweat, man. It's called having a senior moment.
Yeah, right.
So on letting staff help write clinical notes and on never auditing charts, what is letting staff write clinical notes?
I don't have a problem with that.
And that's a 1, 2, something like that.
Yeah.
You're breaking my rules, man. So never auditing charts.
Yeah, that's probably pretty foolish.
So
It's
what
like
we're
not
talking
balancing a
about,
checkbook or,
what's a 1 to 10 here?
again, it's not a problem until it's a problem. So it's a 1 until it becomes a problem, and that record becomes, places itself under the microscope, and then it could be a 10. So it's hard to say. So I think if you just split that down in the middle and say, let's call it a 5, you should have systems in place. You should go back and periodically check your work. Oh, I know that story that just came back to me, that senior moment. I've got a client that I work with, female. I love working with female dentists. They get things. It's all about the show. It's like going to Disney, when the actor's on the grounds, you're in character. You don't take your mask off and smoke a cigarette in front of everybody. That's how it is in her practice. And she sees patients twice a week, Monday, Wednesday, and then Tuesday, Thursday, it's admin day where they catch up on their notes to make sure everything's tight. They prepare for the next clinical day. And clinical day is all about the show. Everybody's on the floor. You put your mask on. No smoking on the floor. And for a long time, if you know me at all, I wear, a dark colored shirt and jeans in every office I go in. And that's all I wear ever. I don't tuck my shirt in. I don't dress up to kiss butt. I do me because I'm comfortable that way. Mm-hmm. But I would always dress up when I go to see her without fail because I didn't want to disrespect her. And I was there sometimes during stage day. And there was a reverence to that. And I'm sure she wouldn't have cared if I just did me and walked in jeans, but I couldn't do that in that environment.
I get it.
So
the expectation has been set. It must be met.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of takeaways for dentists there. If you look at your business as a business and understand that for every hour of this activity, you need to do an hour of this activity, it'll all balance out and allow you to do more dentistry in less time.
I think, and some people are not going to like that I say this, but I ask if you're listening to this, you just really think about it. The truth of the matter is, dentistry is about storytelling. The entirety of dentistry is about storytelling. When you are talking to a patient, if they have a cavity, the cavity is not a problem for them, they're not getting a filling. You have to tell the story about what happens. This cavity gets worse. Little Jimmy goes off to college and he gets bigger, more demineralization. Soon he's going to have a root canal and a crown. And it's the stories we tell. And there are stories that are told verbally and there are stories that are told visually and auditorily. In my practice, I was very, very cognizant of that. I did not allow eugenol in my practice because people are triggered by smells. People are triggered by sounds. We had electric handpieces. We had Scentsy type stuff in the practice all the time because I wanted to control the smells. I wanted to control the sights, the visuals. I wanted to control all of that because if I could, then I could reset the patient's expectation when they come in. And it's not like I'm going to the dentist, here's this baggage. It's I'm going to this place and they're going to make sure I'm healthy. Yeah. And if I could get closer to that, I knew that I would have less ingrained resistance to treatment and acceptance for cases. And so that's what I did. The same is true whenever you're looking at your practice. If you want people to think you're practicing high-level medicine, look like it. You don't go down to the corner Stop and Rob and they've got, old CDs, and they've got hookahs, and they've got every other thing in the world in there, and say, oh, well, I'm going to buy Bitcoin here. I mean, it just, it's that's not the place to buy Bitcoin or whatever it is that you're doing. It's not the place. And it's not that the people there aren't necessarily honest or what have you. It is they have not created the environment that's conducive to you doing that thing there.
Yeah.
You want your practice to be an environment that is conducive to the goal of the practice. And if your goal of the practice is providing great health care to people, guess what? You have to have case acceptance for that. And if your goal is making money, guess what? You have to have case acceptance for that. And all of that stems from what people's visual, auditory, and olfactory senses tell them when they walk into your practice.
Yeah.
We've all done the same thing. If you're going to a restaurant and you smell the place when you walk in, I turn around and walk out.
You got to go to a barbecue place. You don't smell barbecue.
Right.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I just got to say for the record, I love the smell of you, So, yeah.
Most people don't. But it's a derivative of clove, right? That's what we were talking about earlier.
I don't want to talk about that.
I know you don't want to talk about
I
that.
still have
That is a private
sensation
story
over
that
that issue.
occurred over breakfast.
Yes.
One might say it is a burning issue at this point.
There you go.
So, all right, how about assuming software equals compliance? 1 to 10.
Such a broad question.
I know it is.
I'm like,
This
wow.
this one is my setup question. That's why that's the last one in that section there.
I got to give a number before I give my rationale.
Yep.
I guess I'm going to say a 3.5.
Okay. And explain.
That'll balance things out. Dental software sucks. They all suck.
I agree.
Maybe I'll leave it at that so I don't get sued by all of them. They suck. I don't know what I would do to make it better, but I can just complain and say that they suck. The biggest thing that legislators, we've seen it here in Texas, and even with HIPAA and the HIPAA security rule and PCI requirements, they all comes down to access controls and audit trails. And by the nature of a dental practice, having access controls and locking your computer when you step out of the room, those are not things that are conducive to a high flow, high production dental practice. So I always kind of laugh when a dentist, a prospective client calls me and they say, hey, I'm a rule follower. I want to be the most compliant client you ever have. I want to comply with all the rules and regulations.
Would you like to do business?
Yeah. I say I don't believe it's possible. So, I do what I can to help my clients manage the risk, but my goal is not 100% compliance. I don't believe in my heart that it's possible. You got such a multitude of regulations, and even if you just focus on just the area that we're talking about here, dental software, I don't think you can be 100% compliant.
So what we did is I had the computer set within Windows settings that it would go to sleep and turn the screen on. When it would turn the screen on, I had a screensaver program that would play videos. The videos would play on monitor 2, which is the one in front of the patient, and it was all commercials about stuff I do. Hey, you ever thought about doing teeth whitening? Think that smile's a little crooked? Yeah. We do that. Ask about it whenever your doctor comes in. But I had a fingertip scanner. So biometrics, if you want to be as exacting as possible in following all the HIPAA and OSHA regulations, you have to have your computer turn off the second you walk away from it.
Yeah.
Okay. The best way to do that is to have a biometric scanner because you don't have to click on it with the mouse. You don't have to type anything in. I kind of measured my efficiency in the office in the number of mouse clicks that were required to do things.
Yeah.
It's actually why I switched to Dentrix, Open Dental over Dentrix, is because Dentrix in certain pages required 13 clicks and in other pages it required 4. And so Open Dental uses this same menu structure in every single screen. And so it was the same number of clicks in every one. So that reduced the amount of training that I had to give my team. Because if I trained them on the back office stuff, they were automatically trained on the front office stuff. But with Dentrix, you had to retrain them so they knew where the things were. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd suggest that if you want to be as compliant as possible, and that's just coming from my background, IT and cybersecurity wise, because that will keep you compliant in a way that doesn't also hurt your productivity. So
yeah, I can appreciate that.
So no DEA reconciliation log. Most dentists don't keep drugs in office.
Yeah. It's a funny thing about controlled substance issues. Oh, I'm sorry.
Number.
I'm going to say this one's going to probably be a 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, easily. Because the problem is when you're talking, anytime you're talking about controlled substances, whether it's prescribing practices or, physically having drugs in your office and the lack of accountabilities that should be there, that seldom are. I think I was about to say double negative.
Mm-hmm.
When a dentist gets in trouble with the DEA, they're going to also have to answer to the dental board for that same thing. And that's really the only situation I can think of where it's not a double jeopardy because you're being reprimanded by each agency's own administrative rules.
Right.
But you can actually lose your license and go to prison over controlled substance issues, just like you can with Medicaid fraud, but probably more so over controlled substance rules and violations. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to get in serious trouble with the DEA. And if you're lucky, they'll just give you the opportunity to surrender your license. And if you're an anesthesia-based practice, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even if you're not, they're going to report their findings to the dental board, and you're going to have to answer to both. And if the DEA decides to pursue you, the U.S. attorney decides to treat you like a criminal and send you to prison for a little bit, you're going to lose your license automatically.
Right.
And sure, you can possibly get your license back, and I've seen cases where dentists have, but it's going to cause you a lot of lost sleep. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and it's going to cost you your livelihood for a little while.
Now, you only need the DEA license if you're actually prescribing scheduled drugs, but...
Well, right, and there's no regulation requiring a dentist to have a DEA registration.
Right.
To use controlled substances.
Whenever they switched it to where you only had to be... Because originally they wanted you to have a DEA license and whatever the state one is.
State-controlled substance, CSR, yeah.
And they wanted you to have it no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what you prescribed, you had to have both. And then they relaxed that. I don't remember what year that was. I think maybe 2017, when they said, okay, you don't have to have the DEA anymore unless you're prescribing, actual controlled substances, schedule drugs. But that one's a big one. And I think a lot of people don't actually know the rules and regulations there. Like literally, if your lockbox, and if you have controlled substances in your office at all, you have to have a lockbox, and it has to have 3 locks, people, 3. In general, you have 2 locks on the box, and the box is in a locked room. But that room's not locked, guess what? You're in violation.
I can't tell you how many times I walk into a dental office and their dope is sitting out in the open.
Yeah.
Look, drugs, I call it dope. Still got a little cop. But it's sitting out in the open in the break room with the little serving cups right next to it.
Right, but even on a different note there, to your point of there is no way you can follow the regulations, there is no stipulation in the regulation for time of use. And so if at the moment you have a vial in your operatory and you are currently using, there's literally no stipulation within the law that says if you're currently using it, doesn't have to be in lockbox. It just says it has to be in a lockbox behind 3 locked doors, or between 3 locks. And so there's literally no instance in which you have controlled substances in your office that you're not breaking the law at some point simply by using it.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Right. Yeah. But again, it comes down to risk management. You've got to implement some processes to minimize
exactly
stuff from happening.
And that's the point I wanted to make here is that there's literally no chance that you're not breaking the law. I read a study recently. I'm trying to remember the exact number. It was either 50 or 100, but they said the average American citizen breaks between 50 and 100 laws every single week, without ever knowing.
Hmm.
So just because of the network of weird contradictory laws that we've got,
Right.
you know, people may not realize this, but in Tennessee, if you spit on the sidewalk, it's like a felony or something. And it comes down from when tuberculosis was spreading and they made laws. And, you know, it's easier to make a law than it is to get rid of a law. And so there's a lot of laws out there that just create this myriad minefield where there's really no place safe to step. So everyone's breaking the law, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
And that's kind of scary.
Yeah. Interesting.
You know? But I'll see if I can find that for you. I think you'd get a kick out of that
I totally
one.
enjoy that.
So, all
I got
right.
a word for that. I got a phrase for that.
The staff has access to controlled substances.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem. That's going to
Give
hurt.
me a number.
You know, I'm going to say an 8. So
All right.
it's not that you can't delegate duties related to handling controlled substances. So you have to have certain safeguards in place. You know, have you reviewed their background? You know, what's their propensity for substance abuse? Have they or their family had a substance abuse issue?
Do they have money problems?
Yeah. Do they have money problems? Have you given them that authorization to be able to handle those drugs in writing?
Have they received any training?
And right. So, yeah, almost nobody has made those designations in writing. Nobody's done those background checks and documented them correctly. There's no policies and procedures. Heck, I sell a DEA compliance policy manual on my website. That's like our lowest selling item.
And it's the one that we've had the most issues with so far of every single thing.
Well, that's the
that we've
greatest threat.
listed.
Yeah, right. I mean, those should be flying off the shelves in our office. I get like orders for those like 1 or 2 a month, maybe. That blows my mind. People buy drug logs all day long, but they don't have those policies and procedures. And I know full well that many of those people have delegated duties that they don't have any policies. Policies, again, it's not for you. It's for the regulatory people that are looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's a playbook for your staff.
All right, so you covered this one already, kind of. Expired sedation permits, 1 to 10. And I think that the qualifier there is, have you given sedation since the permit expired?
Okay.
Because you're not required to have a permit,
Yeah.
but you're required to have a permit to give sedation.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you've done a sedation without a current permit, that's going to hurt.
So even if you have all of your permits exact, everything of record is up to date, the sliding scale of sedation is such that at any point, anyone can argue that that patient was anywhere on that sliding scale. Mm-hmm. And whenever you have I don't remember what they're called now because they changed the name back in 2012. It used to be light sedation, moderate sedation, and deep sedation. And I think it's like 4 things now, like combination sedation with nitrous oxide and an oral, then combination of nitrous oxide with enteric. I don't know. I haven't had a sedation license in 5 years, so you guys forgive me. Fix me down in the comments. But the point is if you are giving someone IV sedation and enteric, you can't titrate that enteric. And so that means that depending upon their particular, biological makeup, they may go absolutely loopy on the same amount of, let's say, diazepam that would in someone else just result in a mild sedation. Yeah. You have technically broken the law through no fault of your own. And so I hope that shows people that when you are looking at these things, even though everything is black and white, it's very much not black and white. Right. It's kind of a loose framework. And the best that you can do is to check all the damn boxes, and make sure that what is down in the notes is what needs to be down in the notes. There's an old saying, if it's not written, it didn't happen. Yep. And that also means if it's written, it happened. And you guys can take from that meaning whatever you want. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want you to weigh in on that. You'll probably get in trouble.
Yeah, I'll leave that.
Unless you want to weigh in on that one. So No written emergency protocol.
The only people you're going to be in trouble with over that one is going to be the dental board.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say that I've seen anybody lose their license.
No,
over
that's
that.
a slap on the wrist and a
that's
fine.
That's a checkbook issue.
Operating expense.
Yeah, business expense.
I like that checkbook issue. All right.
We call
So
it a spouse issue.
no, I already did that one. The we've never had a problem mindset. This is the way it's always been done. 1 to 10.
Yeah, that's a ticking time bomb right there. Yeah, that's a dangerous person to work with. I won't work with a client like that. It's not worth my time.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
You can't keep them safe anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. No emergency drills, and that includes CPR.
You know, I've been involved in cases where a dentist had, religiously faithful monthly drills and had a patient die.
Right.
And when I did my investigation, I found that, most of the drugs that were in his drug kit were expired, which is a standard of care violation, which could have and should have resulted in some sort of disciplinary action. But that saved his bacon, those records, those training records. So what can I say about the opposite of that?
1 to 10.
Yeah.
Everything's so situational. And that's one of the things I wanted to get across
right.
with this interview
Yeah.
is that all of these things, that could be a 10. It could also be a 10 in the other direction.
Yeah.
You did all this stuff and they look at it and they say, well, there's no fault. This guy was doing all the right things. It just happened.
Yeah.
But it's the perception, it's the story that's being told.
Well, and that's why I was talking earlier about, optics and how things appear.
Yeah.
Is vitally important. I mean, I had a case a few years back with a dentist that patient died, and in retrospect, he overdosed the patient, and he was in denial about it. But the medical examiner was pretty firm with their determination and the facts that presented, and that dentist is still practicing. Never lost his sedation permit or anything. But I've seen cases where a dentist didn't have a blood pressure when he should have, and was caught for that not once but twice. And what's that? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah, he got shame on me. And they took his sedation permit, didn't take his license, but he still, it was an anesthesia-based practice. He had to go and get it back, and it was a headache, but it was also a checkbook issue.
Absolutely. So
back to your point.
1 to 10.
Yeah. I'm going to say it's got
You didn't know these were going to be hard questions.
Scale. Yeah, no doubt. Goodness. I mean, gosh, it could be a 1 or it could be a 10. I mean, well, it's not a 10 because I've not seen anybody go to prison over it.
Right.
So
we'll give her a 7 like we did last time.
Yeah, maybe like a 1 to 7.
Okay. The doctor is not involved in compliance.
Compliance with what?
Compliance.
Are we talking about the X-ray equipment? Are we talking about
anything? Dentist is not involved in anything. He just has an office manager who takes care of everything for him.
Well, that could range. That could be a 1 or it could be a 10. Look, I've seen a guy who sat back on his laurels, and his wife did all the dentistry, and she was not a dentist. We could never make a case stick on her. Something about those.
She's not a dentist, so this is something I want to cover. Practice of medicine without a license. Guess who is going to get you? It's not the dental board. Do you want to know why? Because it's not in their charter.
That's right.
Because they're not a dentist.
Yeah, they have no
so
jurisdiction.
you can have somebody doing dentistry next door to you, and until you have a full police investigation that finds that they were practicing medicine without a license, nothing will happen to them.
With video evidence, nothing's going to happen. But yet, impermissible
But
delegation.
shouldn't the board protect people against dentists who don't have a license?
Well, right, but if they don't have a license, the only other authority is the district attorney, and it's a criminal case.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of district attorneys, because it's not rape, murder, kidnapping.
They did a filling.
Practice of medicine. Are you kidding me? That's a crime?
Right.
They're not comfortable with it. It's so hard to get a criminal prosecution on practicing dentistry without a license or a PEDWAL case. It almost never happens.
It almost has to be class action at that point before someone's going to pay attention.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, just so you know, that is the God's honest truth. All right, so I screwed up on this one because I was thinking a certain way when I wrote the previous question, and I guess it spilled over into this one. So my next one is over-reliance on your office manager. Same question, really.
Yeah, and I think let me just split that one down the middle.
All right.
We'll call it a 5 because it could be a 1 or a 10. I mean, man, I've seen some really awesome office managers save dentists from a lot of headaches, but I've also seen where they've been the cause of the headache, and the dentist doesn't have the
balls.
Yeah, to take care of the problem.
See, I'm always here for you. I'll say the explicatives.
There you go.
So we have no written policies, only habits.
Yeah, it's probably going to be like a 2 or 3 unless it's DEA related.
Or unless someone writes a complaint.
Yeah.
All right, give me one.
I got one for you.
All right, so I got to give a 1 to 10.
Yeah,
so.
1 to 10. You're late on your EPEs.
EPE.
Your
Define?
X-ray equipment performance evaluations.
Oh, I'm going to say that's actually probably about an 8.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's actually like a 1.
Really?
You write a checkbook for it. But you know what? That's the one thing that dentists stress out about is having to deal with the health department.
No kidding.
And it'll never be reported to the dental board. It'll show up on a public record, but it doesn't account.
I thought the pharmacology board and the radiology board both had to report to the dental board. So I've always been a huge stickler about that.
Yeah, I mean that's the end of it. That's like going in and paying a speeding ticket. It'll never show up on a criminal history.
They're doing so many surprise inspections right now. It's not funny. I'm hearing from dentists all over the country about it.
And dentists call me just beside themselves. Some are like, aggravated. Others are like, oh my God, this is a big deal. And I'm like, hey, I got this. It's no big deal. And you know what? If the issue is fine, we'll just, we'll appeal it. And we'll go in there and play nice and show them what we've done and let them know how much we value and care and wish to comply with the regulations.
And then write a check.
And write a check, but the goal is to write a smaller check, and they're like happy when that they get to write a smaller check. But man, they stress the heck out.
Yeah, I did too. See, I learned something here.
I'm like, it's no big deal. It's no big. It's a 1. It's a 0. Write the check.
So this one kind of goes along with the same. High staff turnover without retraining. Depends on what you get the complaint for.
Yeah, I mean, that's like driving a car with the jacked up cruise control, I mean, it's going to take you where it's going to take you, and you're just going to go along for the ride, What kind of ride are you willing to endure?
Yeah. It's just bad policy overall.
Yeah.
Okay, so now in this same segment, I'm turning it over to you. You already kind of jumped on this, but for the last part of this segment, I want you to give me 5 problems, and I'm going to rate them and tell you why, and then you'll tell me how bad I screwed up.
Well, you hit that one earlier, and so I guess we're probably down 2, but the names on the door thing, I mean, most dentists are kind of like clueless about that, but when I went into a dental practice, and I was looking for a reason to go in, and, I was looking for those loose strings to pull. No name on the door, no consumer information sign that
no license
posted
hanging
where patients can see it, no license posted where patients can see it. And that was enough for me to justify going in and investigating and inspecting the rest of your office.
That's your tail light.
Yeah, that's my tail light. Yeah. And I got 7 pounds of dope off a couple guys from no tail light and no front license plate. So pulling.
He means he busted someone for 7 pounds of dope. He did not receive it as a bribe.
Did not. But it sure was a good bust. But you know what? That's the same thing happens. A good bust can happen because you leave yourself exposed by not addressing those little things.
See, that's definitely not a recreational drug habit. That's an occupational drug habit.
I know, right?
Okay, so
just think of the amount of dentistry you could do, though. 7 pounds of dope.
Whew. Okay, so talk to me about 4 more that I might not think of. Things that have come up. Or things that haven't come up that dentists you find just get all interpolated about. I tried to make a pretty complete list, but I know there's some things I didn't think of.
I mean, yeah, you were pretty much on point with all of those,
Yeah, but I missed that one. I thought the radiology thing was way more important than it was.
Yeah, that's interesting. But but that's how dentists think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, par for the course, right? So,
Oh, I just thought of another one I didn't put down. Guys, if you're found guilty of anything, just like we talked about earlier with DEA, if you are sued in small claims court and there is a component of dentistry to it, you're getting reported to the board if you don't win. So if you lose, you got double jeopardy coming because the board's going to be looking into it. That's another one that I didn't put on the list that I should have. So, but it has to have something related to dentistry or drugs,
yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so
Oh, DWI too.
yeah, you got to report that. Okay, so 1 or 10.
Damn, there's another one. Okay, go ahead.
Is that a 1 or a 10?
Oh, DWI. I'm going to give DWI a solid 7 because of the fact that the Texas board actually has a reclamation program that they've set up for dentists who have drug issues. If I'm not mistaken, on the first issue, if you go to them before they find out about it, they'll put you into the program. And if you don't go to them before they find out about it, you're going to lose your license. So I'm going to say it can be anywhere from a 2 to a 10.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I've had numerous opportunities, on this side of the fence to, sit down and have a come to Jesus with somebody. And, they did have a drug or alcohol problem. And, we got them to PRN proactively, and they were able to keep it on the down low.
Mm-hmm.
And, look, stuff happens. I mean, don't think that you're immune because you have easy access to it, and you would say in a normal sound mind today that you would never do something like that, but it happens.
Yeah, MDs are the highest rate of drug abuse of any profession in the world because they have access and they have stress.
Yeah. Anesthesiologists.
Yeah.
Yeah, high prevalence there. But again, and it's not about beating the system. It's about authentically saying, you know what, I got an issue I need to go deal with. And at very least, it's an issue that's going to cause you some regulatory headache. I remember I had a dentist one time that good guy, family man, church man, for whatever reason, went to his office one night and turned on the nitrous and sat in the chair and just had a little nitrous therapy. Housekeeper came in and caught him, and she turned him in. And
I tried to help him before that happened.
Well, I didn't know that was happening. So, but when I found out, we're talking just off the record. He got an attorney to help him walk through that. Thank
That's
goodness.
only case of nitrous addiction I've ever seen.
It's so hard to prove, and my experience shared with him was look, there's no physical evidence here, and all the board has is the testimony from one person,
Mm-hmm.
and it's your word against her word, and there's no other than that. There's no proof.
Well, and the only other one that they had there at the risk of risking too much on this case is that his wife worked in the office with him and was also a provider, if it's the case I'm thinking of.
Oh, no, this was
and so they could not have her testify because you can't be forced to testify against your spouse.
Yeah.
But had she just been a doctor, she would have been forced to testify.
Yeah.
So he lost everything.
Yeah.
They came in, they found him one morning just passed out with the nitrous still on his face. And I had tried to, I was good friends with everyone on the TDA because I don't know if you realize this or not, but I was very active in the TDA. I passed laws, all sorts of stuff. So I went to the president, who was a good friend of mine at the time, and I said, look, this guy's got a problem. I'm afraid he's going to lose his license, but I'm also afraid he's going to hurt somebody. What can we do? And that's when I found out about this program. So I tried to get him in the program, and he chickened out at the last second. They already knew his name. I still have a hard time wrapping my head around this. They already knew his name. The president of the TDA knew his name. The team there knew his name. They were trying to help him to get into the program, to avoid any issues. And he just says, no, I'm not going to do it. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, you've already told everyone you're doing this, and you have no intention of stopping.
Yeah.
it's too late to not do that. You have to do something, and you have to get into this program. But he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
They ended up finding him passed out with nitrous. He lost his practice. He got divorced. Just everything. And he was a genuinely good guy, but just had that monkey on his shoulder.
Yeah. Man, I've seen that time and time again.
That's tragic.
Yeah, it is tragic for so many reasons.
But,
yeah.
Okay.
Man.
Last one you got to give me.
If you or somebody you know has a problem or looks like they have a problem, and be a pal. Take them to get some help. Call PRN.
They won't appreciate it at the time, but they may appreciate it later.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario, even if they don't, they're still alive to not appreciate it.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a heavy one.
Yeah, no, it was heavy. Goodness, man. So, all right, so here's another one. For whatever reason, you take Medicare or Medicaid, and you get an audit.
Don't.
Well,
I just solved the problem.
Yeah, well, that's not on the table. You've already taken it. So, anyway, so you get hit with an audit. Could be one record. It could be 150 records.
Could be 1,000.
But let's just say it's one record.
Okay.
1 to 10.
One record. If you are guilty and the record that they pull shows that you're guilty, I'm going to say that this is probably about a 7. And here's my reasoning why. In general, depending upon the severity of the lack, they will give you a chance. And by chance, I mean they're going to audit the rest of your fucking records. And if they don't find it again, you're going to probably get a slap on the wrist. The second they find a second record with the same deficiency, we're elevating to you're doing this on purpose. And from what I understand, there's no other than black and white. It's either they find one record, they slap you on the wrist, or they find 2 or more records and you're fucked.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, and I've seen, well, yes and no. So one record I would never sweat because usually those are just qualitative audits.
Right.
They're not necessarily looking at the record. They just want to say, hey, what was the patient's experience like? What did they need? Did you do the work? They're not necessarily looking to see if you're committing fraud, but if they're asking for 100 records, 150 records,
they already have you.
They think something's up. Yeah.
Well, if your insurance company asks for more than one record, they're investigating you. Well, and you should no longer speak to them. You should go directly to your lawyer and have all communication go through your lawyer.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Not something that's happened to me personally, but I've known some people that it happened to. And I told them, I said, look, don't talk to them anymore. What do you mean? I'm just trying to cooperate. I said, that's the worst thing you can do. You just shut up. You are guilty until proven innocent. I don't care what the law is supposed to say.
So most of those Miranda warnings that we've all heard 1,000 times, look, they don't have to read those to you unless you're in custody.
Right.
So if you're not in custody and you're just sitting at your desk in your office just answering their questions, it's all fair game.
Mm-hmm. And the problem is now because they have so many constitutional watchdogs and things like that, cops get really freaking irritated. If you say, am I in custody before answering their question, you're going to shortly be in custody because they're going to find a way to put you in custody.
Yep, that poo-poo meter's on overdrive.
So my recommendation there, and I would love to hear your input on this because you're a cop, I've never been. My recommendation there is to answer everything carefully. And the first answer to the first question should be, I'm sorry, I need to call my attorney. And as soon as I speak to them, I would be happy to answer your questions as long as that is what they advise me to do.
And the rebuttal I hear to that is,
lawyers are expensive.
It makes me look, lawyers are expensive, or then
it makes me look guilty.
Like I'm guilty.
I don't care if you look like you're guilty. If they can't prove you're guilty, you're not guilty.
I agree.
So don't talk to the cops.
Yeah.
No offense, man. Never talk to the cops.
Right.
So
and don't be disrespectful.
No,
either.
don't be a dick. Good God,
man,
there's nothing
I've seen
worse.
That too, and I'm like, man, I was about to let you off the warning, but now I'm not even gonna give you a ticket. We're just gonna go to jail.
I was perhaps too honest. The one time I've had, and we'll talk about this later, but the one time I was questioned in something, it was kind of along these lines. I said, I can tell you roughly why I think you're here. But I also know that your job is to get me to say something that I'm going to get in trouble for. And to be honest with you, I don't believe I've done anything to get in trouble, but I'm going to call my lawyer to make sure I tell you exactly the things that you need to know that will answer your questions without putting me into jeopardy. Is that a problem?
Yeah, I like it. Just watch your tone when you say it.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. Don't be a dick. Good God. I got out of more speeding tickets when I was in the military than I had any right to.
You don't tell me you were flashing your boobs.
No, I mean, you know, my OnlyFans page, you know, it's not doing too well. So, no, what I would do is I would always keep my one set of pressed BDUs in the back seat of my car.
There you go.
And I would hang it on that side mirror
so they can see it
on my passenger side. And I swear to God, every time I got pulled over, and I'm not a huge speeder, but there's this one area, St. Martinville is notorious for speed traps. And it's one of those places where, guys, if you're driving along and you see the speed limit drop by more than 10 miles an hour between two signs, that is a speed trap. Yes. It is a speed trap. Yep. And you are still going to get a ticket if you were traveling the new speed when you can see the speed limit sign. So if it says 55 and you're going 65 and the last one was 65 and you haven't reached that speed limit sign, they're still going to give you a ticket. Yeah. It's not the law, but it's what's going to happen. Yeah. So they would walk up to the car and they would do this number because you'd see them. And I started doing this because I watched them the first time I got pulled over. And it wasn't anything I'd done wrong. The guy just wanted to ask me something about the vehicle, which is weird, but you know. So it was an old Toyota 4x4. I just love that thing. I'd restored it and stuff. And so he was just like, hey, this is a cool truck. You know, hey, where are you heading? You know, fishing. So I watched him whenever he came out. He did this number. He looked right to left, back bumper up, then back to me as the driver. And I was like, he's looking for something to stop me for, and he hasn't found something yet. And so when he came up and he came to ask me about the truck auspiciously, I said, was I speeding? I don't think I was, but I know that speed limit sign back there just dropped, and I know St. Martinville is a speed trap, but I'm heading to drill. And he said, yeah, I saw your uniform in the back. And from that day forward, I hung my BDUs nice and pressed and starched in the back of my truck every freaking time.
Got to play the game.
It's pretty cool, man. Yeah. You know, cops may not be soldiers, but a lot of them were. A lot of them who haven't been soldiers wish they were, or at the very least feel a kinship to other people who serve. Yeah. And that's a little bit manipulative, but let's be honest. So is the way they're going to question you. Right. So it's the story you're telling.
Yeah, you got to tip the scale in your favor.
Absolutely. It's all the story. The scales. Yeah. But, all right, if you had 5 pieces of advice that every dentist anywhere in the nation, or specifically in Texas, should follow, 5 things that they need to be doing to keep themselves from the majority of the trouble, what are they?
Well, number 1 is know what you believe and stand on those ethics, those values, those morals, and practice from that vantage point in everything that you do on and off the job. Because I've seen more dentists get in trouble for conduct off the job than I should have ever seen. So, so be that good person. If you're not a good person, become a good person. Yeah. Treat your staff well. The golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated. You know, don't demand from people what you're not willing to put out yourself. So, number 5, gosh.
There are only 4 rules.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think that's it right there. Be a good person. Work to become a better person. Don't be a dick.
Rule number 5. See rule number 1.
Yeah, there you go.
Got you covered. Well, is there anything that I should have asked you, but I didn't?
Yeah, I'll probably think of it in about 5 minutes. as soon as we hit the stop button.
As soon as I turn off the record button over there. Well, in that case, I think it's time to say thank you for coming on the podcast.
It's been a good time.
How can our listeners find you if they're in Texas or anywhere and they just want to make sure that they keep themselves safe?
Yeah, you can always find me through my website, it's dentalcompliance.com. And, just put in your email address there. And from there, it's easy to get on a sequence. We can get on a phone call in a very short amount of time. You can also DM me through Facebook. I'm pretty active on Facebook. So.
Yeah, search him out under Tooth Cop. Check out his podcast. And until next time, guys, thanks for giving me your time to listen to this podcast. I'll see you next time.
And watch me educate. Yeah, we been coulda started, but it's never late. Do it for my kids, yeah, let's set it straight. Do it for your kids, gotta set it straight. It's time to regulate. We need change now. We need solo.